Okay, so in this session, one of the things we wanted to do, and if you've been here for the whole day, you've had the opportunity to hear about a couple of different national models and organizations. And, you know, we just had a talk by Michael Ball looking at things from sort of the state level. And so now we want to localize a little more, turn the lens on the three largest municipalities here in Niagara County, Lockport, North Tonawanda, and Niagara Falls. And the simple question, if you see it in your program, is what's developing in Niagara County? So how we'll handle this is I'm going to ask each of the panel members to introduce themselves and talk about what their role and primary job responsibilities are in their city, and make an initial response to that question of what's developing in Niagara County, what's developing in each of these cities. And then when that's done, I'll prompt them with a few other questions, and then I'll open it up to the audience. So we'll keep it pretty simple, and we'll just simply go from your left to right. We'll start with Seth and continue on.
Hello, everybody. My name is Seth Piccirillo. I'm Director of Community Development for the City of Niagara Falls. Our department, and we have relationships with a lot of organizations here, are to primarily manage the federal funding that comes into the city with a focus on housing, home ownership, and renovations of vacant structures whenever we can. What's developing in our city? I would say there's two major spheres of development that are happening right now. One being partnerships, and not just partnerships in a feel-good way, partnerships that actually leverage funds and are bringing resources into our city and the county. I would say that our communities, our three cities, North Tonawanda, Lockport, and Niagara Falls, are enjoying a very productive working relationship right now, maybe as productive as we've seen, because we know that in Niagara County especially, if one area is succeeding, whether it be from residential growth or tourism growth, we're all succeeding. The other sphere, can everybody hear me okay? All right. The other sphere of development is actual development. We are excited to be able to talk to all the folks here and others. Instead of just talking about renderings or plans, we can tell you about actual construction sites and finished projects happening right now. Everywhere from the removal of the Robert Moses Parkway to several hotel renovations and new builds going on, to new residential investments that include market rate apartments on 3rd Street in downtown, and also something we're very excited about, the Walnut Homes, which came out of a partnership, like I said before, with the YWCA and Housing Visions. So we are seeing right now really an unprecedented investment in our city, and we need to keep that going. We need to keep leveraging funding, and we also, when we're focusing on poverty, knowing that that development and that bringing in private sector money into the city is a very important piece in getting people out of poverty and creating some new opportunities in our city. So with that, I'll pass it over.
Thank you, Seth. My name is Mike Zimmerman. I am Community Development Director for the City of North Tonawanda and Executive Director of Lumber City Development Corporation. So in those two kind of complementary roles, we manage all the community development and economic development activities in North Tonawanda. Our mission, I think, is pretty clear, pretty much the same as all of ours probably across the board, to try to make our community a better place to live, better place to do business, better place to visit from out of town or just from the next town over, live, work, and play, those kind of key areas. In terms of what is developing in North Tonawanda, I always think geographically, so I'll say where is developing in North Tonawanda a little bit. We work all throughout the city, but we really have a heavy focus on the downtown and waterfront area. If you're all familiar with Webster Street, the Erie Canal, and of course we have a couple mile stretch of Niagara Riverfront. We just last week kind of had our first public meeting unveiling a plan called the Momentum Project. It's funded through actually some assistance from our partners at New York State, the Brownfield Opportunity Area Program. It's a big planning project for the area of our city that was negatively affected by brownfields, the former industrial sites that have left, dirty environmental sites in our community. So that's the downtown and waterfront area. We're planning for a lot of investment in that area. We want to add a lot of housing. We want to add hotel. We want to add retail, restaurants, attractions. We want to make our downtown a true 24/7, 365 downtown, not just a place people visit in the summer when it's nice out, they come down to the canal, but a place where people live and work and are there year-round. That's a major focus area for us. So I hope in a nutshell that covers what's going on in Lockport, Chuck.
All right. Well, my name's Chuck Bell. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the City of Lockport, and like Mike, I also staff our local development corporation, which is a 501c3 economic development entity, excuse me, which actually provides a lot of flexibility, having that mechanism, having a not-for-profit that has a private sector board of directors that can take a look at some of the economic development issues that face our community. You'll hear a lot of familiar themes as we talk about some of the things that we're focusing on. And to Seth's first point, a lot of partnerships as well. As we in Lockport think about the potential of some of our new development, we wonder about the viability of additional hotel rooms. So we partnered with North Tonawanda to find some savings to do a feasibility study about the hospitality market, and to see if what we believe to be true is actually true. And I think in both cases we found that the numbers support what we feel in our gut and what we think when we look around. Also, trying to get a real diversity of housing options, looking at market rate housing and affordable housing and how they can work together and be in the same geography to make it to develop new, vibrant critical mass, or to enhance the critical mass that could and should exist, and to make it more sustainable. We really are trying to focus on crossing all income levels. But primarily from the economic development side and what's developing in Lockport, we're looking at some major anchor projects and really trying to do them in the downtown of Lockport, which is a very walkable downtown. We think that can be improved, but all the bones are there. And we tie in to the state, and heard Michael Ball talking about the core strategies of the Regional Economic Development Plan. We really take those to heart, and they make really good sense for many of the small cities in Western New York, and certainly for Lockport. So as we try and focus on the smart growth, we do projects. Our two biggest projects in the last couple of years have been within 2 blocks of each other, and both have been state-assisted, one of which was the creation of a new hockey arena right in the downtown, 2-pad NHL rinks, drawing attention and kind of furthering that demand that we thought existed for the hotels, and focusing on the old Harrison radiator plant. And if anybody knows anything about Lockport, it was the locks on the Erie Canal that developed the community and created the fabric that then spread out. And then after that, it was Harrison Radiator. We have 500,000 square foot of manufacturing space that was gradually disinvested from through General Motors and Harrison, and it's right off our downtown, and it's had massive impacts, both originally to the good and more recently to the bad on our community, because neighborhoods have been built up around that plant, and those neighborhoods have suffered tremendously as the disinvestment occurred in the 80s and 90s. I'm getting a little long-winded, but I think it's so important to everything that we're doing and a lot of the things that have been talked about today. We really want to bring that critical mass, bring that action, bring those jobs back to that area, and see that then translate out to the neighborhood. And while we're doing that, we have to be mindful of making those connections and making sure that there is job training available and that there is a connection between the neighborhoods that have suffered and the physical bricks and mortar anchor tenant. And 2 years ago, we were able to bring in a major technology company that focuses on high voltage amplification and testing related to the semiconductor industry, and bring 100 jobs back into that factory. It's not the glory days, but it's a step in the right direction, and we continue to push on that. And that was assisted through the Regional Economic Development Council, and in both funding and technical support. So that's kind of what we're working on. And I guess as we talk about what's happening in Niagara County, it's hard for me to not add that apparently facial hair is developing in Niagara County. So It's something we're all working on.
Partnership.
Partnership, yeah.
Partnership.
Chuck provided a good segue into my question in speaking about how you do partner. And we are coming off the heels of a presentation about from Empire State Development. Michael, do you want to add anything to what ways have you and your city partnered with either the state or other regional assets?
Sure. I mean, I think the obvious answer is that you keep that line of communication open. I mean, we keep in touch with representatives from ESD about our projects all the time, make sure that what we're trying to do aligns with the regional goals. It makes sense that development in this region finally has kind of a structured vision to it. So it makes sense for us to play into that. But on a localized level, we're trying to also recognize that there's a lot of benefit to partnering, for example, with our neighboring city. It's across the county line, it's in Erie County, but the city of Tonawanda, we're the twin cities. Most people who come to North Tonawanda, if they go to the Riviera or if they come down for Canal Fest or something, they don't really think about they're in North Tonawanda. They just know they're there, this is a nice place, this is where I want to be. So it benefits all of us, kind of rising tide lifts all ships, I guess, approach that we partner in development. We're working on that Brownfield Opportunity Area plan I talked about. They're working on their waterfront revitalization plan, and we're talking closely with them to make sure that our plans actually match, that there's some similarities there, that maybe they're covering things that are working to their strengths and we're working to ours, so that our community benefits as a whole.
Okay. Seth, anything to add?
I would say Empire State Development and the state's Department of Homes and Community Renewal are not even just at the table, they are a huge component to all the positive stuff that I was talking about before, whether it be downtown economic development or housing credits and historic tax credits to renovate buildings. They are here as a major player, and they've changed their way of doing business through the regional economic development councils, that everything's very transparent and competitive. They are rewarding partnerships. Some of our subrecipients, Highland Community Revitalization, Center City, and Neighborhood Housing Services, for the first time applied to HCR for a joint grant for homeowner renovations, and the state awarded that $400,000. So it's always great to talk about partnerships, but when the state comes through with a major incentive, now you're incentivizing partnerships, because we all know very well that our traditional funding sources are not increasing. So if there's a way for us to collaborate, and if the state is incentivizing that, that's what we need to do.
Chuck, talk to us a little bit about how you develop, and I'll call it your, but I realize it's not Chuck's vision, but how do you and the city go about developing your vision and strategy for economic development in Lockport?
Okay. Also, kind of a recurring theme here as well. Mike was talking about the Brownfield Opportunity Area program administered through the Department of State. And we are going through that program as well, and I think it's so valuable because it's one of the best planning tools that currently exists out there, where you can get grant money to do just that, to work with your community at a street level, at a grassroots level, bring people together and start to develop a public vision, a community vision, and a plan that then corresponds. So we've benefited greatly from that program, and it's brought a lot of the stakeholders together. And to Seth's earlier point, partnerships really help leverage that. And when I talk about stakeholders, again, it's not lip service. We've got a lot of really active community partners. And when you get them in a space together, you find out that there's so much overlap in terms of what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. And it actually, you find, I think I've found in Lockport, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same, the plan itself kind of writes itself, and everybody can get on the same page pretty quickly.
How about Nancy?
Can I just say ditto? I mean,
Yeah, that's what we run into on these panels.
yeah, no. Chuck's absolutely right. I think building the plan, the economic development vision, whatever you want to say, it starts at that grassroots level. We try to get out to the community, hold some public meetings, invite them into our offices to say this is what we're working on, make sure they're up to date on it, and get their feedback on it, because if we're working in a silo, then we're really not serving, you know, the residents in North Tonawanda. So that's been something we've been actively trying to do, and a good way to do that, and I think this is kind of what you're speaking to, has been to reach out to the local community not-for-profits. We have good relationships with Twin City Community Outreach, United Way, those kind of groups, because they're plugged into the community on a more kind of ground level than even we are every day. So their feedback and partnership on projects is very valuable.
And I mean, if we want to, and I know, since I'm a Niagara Falls resident, I know, Seth, you directly go to the people. I mean, it's one thing to work through the nonprofits and the community groups, but to go to the actual people, the residents in the neighborhoods. And I think you sort of have a whole calendar when you develop your plan, right?
Right, I think if you go, the community are experts on their street. They know their area and their neighborhood better than you do. They see it at every hour of the day. So at some point, you have to realize that you can't go to, from a municipality on any level and tell people things about their neighborhoods. It's foolish. And they have better ideas than you do in many situations. So when we're talking about public projects, going out to the community in that way, I think is valuable. And then also with economic development, you have to also realize that sometimes the people investing their own money, they might have something that's different than your master plan. So you have to always think about the end user as knowing something different than you do. And it's not always going to look exactly how you think it's going to look.
Okay. So if you could each speak a little bit about entrepreneurship specifically, because we've talked about that quite a bit. So residents who, and a lot of the folks in this room work very directly with residents one-on-one. Residents who are struggling with employment opportunities, might have an interest in starting a business. What can they share with those folks in your cities, right, that speak directly to entrepreneurship? What do you offer?
Well, again, recurring themes, but partnership. When it comes to entrepreneurship, one of the most exciting things that I think is happening in Lockport and in Niagara County, I definitely see it in Niagara Falls as well, is a partnership with the YWCA, who've been talked about throughout the day and helped serve food today. But the Carolyn's House program is really exciting in terms of a job training program where you've got a not-for-profit that sees economic development, and a couple specific examples. You've got the Niagara Falls Airport and then the Lockport Hockey Arena. It sees economic development happening and partners up and brings a tool to the table and actually runs the food service and concession there, and not just kind of a turnkey thing and now everybody's got their food and their beverage. You've got a job training program that's giving people an opportunity to become certified in the Safe Serve or Serve Safe. I always screw that up, but and to learn inventory management and ordering and to get those entrepreneurial skills and develop them. So that's one that I love to focus on. I think it's really exciting. But also, as I talk about the Harrison Place facility, the former Harrison Radiator plant, we've really been focusing on trying to create a culture there of entrepreneurship, again, consistent with the regional plan. And we've been looking at ways to bring some advanced manufacturing training into that facility. The Dream It, Do It program that was mentioned earlier is something that we think is extremely important, both at the advanced manufacturing level and then just the trades level, to get people involved and get people interested. It's a fledgling effort right now. We're still working on it. I don't have all sorts of great successes to point to yet, but we really want to encourage our downtown and that facility as a place for business growth. We've got flex space. We've got it under the control of our local development corporation, so we can develop it with an eye towards community mission and workforce development. So those are a few things that we've been focusing on.
That's great. That's great, Michael.
Yeah, I've found with working with entrepreneurs, we get them all the time in our office at different stages. The entrepreneurial kind of cycle is not always A to B. That, I guess we'll go back to partnerships, is the key thing for entrepreneurs. We've been lucky in the past couple of years through the Regional Economic Development Council to be able to provide some grant assistance to startup companies and one-person entrepreneurs, and that's been really valuable for us. But what I've found in most cases is that capital isn't really the biggest question. They have so many questions about how to get started, where they need to, tap into resources. So being able to connect them to those resources has been more valuable for us. So we work closely with the Niagara Small Business Development Center, on the phone with them just about every day because they are an incredible resource for the county. They provide free services to people looking to do business planning, financial analysis, anything that they need to get their business off the ground, or even once they're up and running, help them refine it. So trying to plug people into groups like that, and then once they are up and running, in North Tonawanda, we have groups locally. We have a Downtown Merchants Association, trying to get people to understand to be active, to reach out. You join a group like that, and now the little bit of money you had to market yourself gets multiplied because you're marketing in a community effort. So trying to connect entrepreneurs with the resources that are out there is, the valuable service I hope we provide for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Seth?
We're trying to do right now, whether it be vacant houses or vacant buildings, connect entrepreneurs to people willing to invest or take a risk on a vacant building with a vacant building. We all have vacant buildings, unfortunately. Everyone here knows of vacant buildings, some of which are city-owned. So we're trying to figure out ways to, with all those traditional grants and small business type and housing grants that are out there that we all have, connect people specifically with vacant spaces to see if they could take a chance on it as a specific place for them to get started, and to take something that a vacant building, a boarded-up building, clearly is a signal of blight and poverty. Even if it's the only bad building on the street, it makes people uncomfortable, and it doesn't make people want to be there. So if we can connect entrepreneurs or people that are willing to be new homeowners with a vacant structure and bring it back to life, that's what we want to do, especially we've been trying it in the last couple of years. We're getting better at it, and we want that to be our standard way of doing businesses in the years to come.
Okay. Well, at this point, we have a great opportunity here. I mean, we can't get much more local than this, at least in the 3 municipalities. So what I'd like to do is open it up to you for questions for either Chuck and what's going on in Lockport, Michael, what's going on in North Tonawanda, and also Seth and what's going on in Niagara Falls. And I do think Mayor Deister joined us, so I just wanted to welcome Paul, and running for re-election again, just announced. So. Now, I think, as you know, by this point, that we're live streaming this. I'll try to repeat the questions, but if you could speak loudly and clearly, and you can direct your question to one of the three folks up here, that would be great. So, questions for the panel? Yeah.
How about instead of one great big company, a bunch of little companies in an old building, like a business incubator?
So the question is, what about the idea of, instead of one big company, a bunch of small companies in an incubator type situation?
Yep.
Do you mind?
Go for it.
Because I was talking about the Harrison plant and kind of extolling the virtues of bringing in the company that brought 100 jobs. That's the key. I mean, you're right. What we started out with is a massive building that was essentially a ton of flex space. And, what do we do? What we've been doing for about 5 years now is just kind of grinding away. Anytime we can create new space and make it affordable and get somebody in there, we've been doing it. And it's through those efforts that were a concerted and slow grind that created new businesses, that then new businesses fed off one another, brought their friend in who was always thinking about doing this. A supplier came in, and it became a little more of a hub of activity. And it wasn't until we had 40 small businesses, 5 or fewer people in there, that we could even begin to try and attract a larger company. The key is not taking our eye off what got us there and what really can help build an economy. You're right, absolutely.
How many jobs total?
It's 250 now. It topped out in the heyday over 1,000. So we'll never fully recreate that, but it's pretty exciting to see activity back in the facility.
Anyone else want to respond to that? Incubator ideas?
I think incubator is something we talk about a lot. One thing that really successful incubators around the country have a private company funding source somewhere in it. I think that's key, and that's something I think we could talk about and try to come up with strategies with. It's easier to do an incubator if there's some non-government funding source in it as an investor, but it's definitely something that's needed.
No.
All right, more questions? In the back, Mary Ann?
Seth, could you give us an update on the program where if people moved out of certain blocks, there was a financial incentive
Sure.
for them? Will it continue and will it expand?
You know, we're halfway through that. Basically, we are going to start with 20 people. We're over 10. We're seeing success with it. We're also seeing it help motivate more market rate apartments in the target area. We're going to get to 20, and then we're going to evaluate whether it'll continue. I think what we would want to look at again is that something that we could present to a foundation or private funding source as opposed to it being government funded. We wanted to start that program to, you know, have it signal the fact that obviously that loss of young people has been an issue in our city and all of our cities. We think we've done that, but I think moving forward, if it's going to continue, we want to look at an alternative funding source.
But, how many of you, by a show of hands, do not know about LiveNF? What's called LiveNF? So some people don't. Could you sort of give the nuts and bolts of LiveNF?
Sure. A couple years ago, in partnership with Niagara University, we started a program saying if you have graduated from either a 2 or 4 year college within the last 2 years, we will reimbursably help pay your student loan costs. We see that student loan debt is usually $281 a month. We basically multiply that out so that we would help these people with about $3,500 a year for 2 years. It created a larger conversation than we thought it was going to. What we wanted to basically say is we have lost half our population in 50 years, many of them being young people, many of them being college educated. So we wanted to really focus on that. The nice thing is LiveNF has kind of morphed into a kind of a community marketing campaign for anyone living in Niagara Falls or having them move back in. We've been happy with the success. It's been a learning process, but we're a couple years into it, and we're going to keep evaluating it.
Yeah. Was there another? Oh, yes, in the middle.
Mr. Zimmerman, North Tonawanda has become an absolute Webster Street area, and Yellowfront is absolutely beautiful. It's become a destination again. And it's heartening for someone who's lived there for the last 50 years to see that it's come back to what it used to be. But my question and concern is the brownfields on Block from the Jerez plant, brownfields on Oliver, from the pumps, the next
Sure.
pumping station. They've all been remediated. Is there a plan and a timeline for shovels to the ground for those brownfields to help the rest of North Tonawanda have better economic development?
Sure. Each property is its own conversation, I'll put it that way. But for a lot of them, I'd say yes. We've seen a lot of momentum at, I think the one you're probably referring to is what we call Buffalo Bolts up on Oliver Street. I know if you drove there now, you'd still think there's nothing there. There's a fence there and a road, but no businesses there. But we've had local businesses who've purchased property. They have expansion plans. We're working with a third company right now on the remaining acreage there. So the potential is there to add jobs in those areas.
No timeline for shoveling the ground?
Nothing set yet, put it that way.
Someone said the Jerez, the old Jerez on Walk might be a residential project, or is it not allowed to say?
I'm not aware of any project proposed for Derez site.
Business, or is it residents?
I think if and when something does happen there, it'll be business related just by the nature of the site. But I don't think there's anything kind of on the agenda right now.
And just to follow up on that in regards to Niagara Falls and kind of the north end of the city, Seth, we've got a couple of large swaths there that have been in remediation for a while. Is there a timetable on those, and is that part of a plan?
That is part of a plan. I know there's remediation continuing. The mayor would be the right person to talk to about that, but I know there is a set date for remediation, and work continues on those.
Okay, great. Others? Yes, up front.
This is for Seth also. I certainly consider Niagara Falls my city, but I live north of Niagara Falls, so obviously the parkway is a concern. I don't but it should be finished. It looks awful the way it has been. And one of the big complaints has been for Niagara Falls residents, as I understand it, that they feel that their access to the gorge has been taken away and that we can have ecotourism. I have to tell you, I was there this summer with my grandson who said, oh, ecotourism, is that ECHO? Because nobody was there, but we won't go there. But you have access, you have access, very difficult, I realize, at Devil's Hole.
Mhm.
You have access at the, just up from Whirlpool. And then you have this beautiful, easy, wonderful access underneath the Rainbow Bridge that I don't know whether the people in Niagara Falls know about it. To me, they could do other access points, but those three are there and shouldn't hold up, I don't think, shouldn't hold up the finishing of the parkway in some way. And I know they just had a meeting recently, but as I understand it, there were still 3 plans presented. I mean, let's get it down to one plan and get it over.
Well, let's look at it this way. Along the Niagara River, you have the parkways being removed, right? I think that signals a very, very big thing for Niagara Falls. We've been talking about removal for a very long time. Now you can actually see the crews taking it out, right? And at the same time, 2 weeks ago, there was that meeting about getting closer to finalizing the plan for the rest of it. Absolutely, waterfront access needs to be improved for the locals and residents. I think the fact that you can actually see crews taking out a section of it and getting closer to a final plan on the other is proof that right now is a unique time for Niagara Falls, that things are moving from the old rendering stage to construction sites. We've been talking about removal of Robert Moses Parkway for pretty much my entire life. And it's still, every day it's a surprise to me when I drive by and seeing it, like, oh, wow, if you can do that, what else can we fix? So I think we're in a very good spot, and that plan is moving forward.
Christine?
Yes, I have a question. First, I'd like to compliment the 3 of you. It's nice to see young men. I've been all over this area. I see progress everywhere, as this young lady said, North Tonawanda, Lockport, gorgeous, going down Main Street, wonderful. Seth, lots of projects going on in Niagara Falls. I'm glad you're there. You all have a respect for the past, and you're also you're willing to take a risk for the future for us. You're making use of the resources available, like Mr. Ball and the Empire State Initiative, and I like the way you're looking toward the future. With that in mind, many of the urban planners are now looking back at neighborhood community centers again. How will that affect any of your plans? This is a question for all 3 of you, because many years ago, they had the little neighborhood that was self-contained. Now, urban planners are coming back to the walkable, sustainable community. Can you tell me how you 3 see that coming to be?
First crack at it.
Well, I'm just,
Nobody wants to do that.
no, I think we're all flattered, and I can't believe you lumped me in as young with these guys, so I appreciate it. But,
To adaptable reuse, I think it's wonderful.
well, I think that, and the 3 of us have had a lot of conversations, and even conversations over beers about our respective communities, and I think that we think very similarly in a lot of ways, and it is, it's a movement, and it's a good one, and especially with the older cities, Rust Belt communities, they were built this way for a reason, and it's just, we've spent too long trying to fight against that, and it's really kind of freeing to try and put our development efforts back and kind of go with the current and get to the fabric of the community and really take full advantage of that. In Lockport, what was actually incredibly stark and scary and eye-opening was the recent Mobile Safety Net team study about poverty. And I mean, we're talking about a lot of positive things and looking to the future, but there's a lot that we're fighting against, and there's a lot of unpleasant situation that we need to improve in any way that we can. One good thing that came out of that eye-opening report showing again, the levels of poverty and troubles with, education or lack of education, was that it got a lot of people in Lockport, at least, around the table. And what happened is we found a lot of, I talked earlier about, groups, not-for-profits, organizations. It was nice to see in different pockets within the city of Lockport, groups that came together, and you've got, your grocer, your churches, you've got a landlord, and you start to, see why the neighborhood is what it is and what people want to see in their neighborhood. And you've got, to Seth's earlier point, people who know it a lot better than we do. So I think that just getting that dialogue going, getting people, talking, and then funneling through our efforts, you just naturally get the resources where they should be and kind of redeveloping those community centers. That's what just a recent experience that's kind of close to the heart for me right now.
I've got 2 points or examples to make here, so if I get lost in my first one, don't let me forget that I had a second one. So, yeah, we're always thinking in terms of kind of downtown urban development for our downtown area. And again, I think geographically, I mentioned it already in the BOA program we're doing. We want to make that a dense, walkable, urban downtown. The BOA program's helping us do that, helping us get a lot of the pre-development type of work done. And one thing we found really interesting already, and we're still really early in the project, we did a housing analysis for the area. There's not a lot of housing in the area, but a larger analysis of what type of housing might work, where's the demand. And we found that the projected growth sectors are in the young age group, 20 to 30, and then in the senior citizen age group. Those are the 2 sectors expected to have population increases. Both of those sectors need different kinds of housing, but rental housing fits for both of those sectors. And when you actually look at it, those 2 groups actually need the same thing out of a neighborhood. They're looking for walkable neighborhoods. They're looking for dense neighborhoods where the places that they shop or get their services are close by and convenient. So we're, in the beginning stages of that plan for that area, trying to think in mind of, if this is going to be a complete downtown, those are going to be the type of people and those are going to be the type of housing units that we need to support. My second point, okay. When we were talking about kind of old urban centers, the old urban center in North Tonawanda really isn't Webster Street in the downtown that we call it now. It's Oliver Street, exactly. So we've started, and we're probably even earlier in this than that. We started talking about Oliver Street internally, and we're getting really excited about the potential there. Oliver Street for a long time has kind of had a negative stigma in North Tonawanda, and as we see it, it doesn't deserve that. You've got a good housing stock, you have good building stock, you do actually have a lot of active businesses in the area, though a lot of people don't know it or realize it. A lot of people don't know it, but if you're on Oliver Street, you're 2 blocks from the waterfront. There's a lot of positive factors there. So we're really excited. Next month, we're going to have some meetings. We're going out into the community, canvassing the community, the people that live in that area, saying, please come to our meetings and tell us what you want to see on Oliver Street so that we can then start to work on aligning the resources and so on and so forth to make that happen. But we think Oliver Street is positioned to be a great place to live in the near future. It will be and can be very walkable. Like I said, it's got good housing stock if you want to live in a single-family home. It's also got apartments. It's got a lot of opportunities. So that's where we're starting to focus a lot of our energy, let's say, for the next couple of years.
First of all, thank you. For us, we know we need to develop walkable neighborhoods and partly, unfortunately, kind of regain what we lost. Unfortunately, urban renewal being a household name, we lost a lot of our walkable neighborhoods. So we know that we want to create that, especially around our downtown, because we don't want just people visiting Niagara Falls, we want them living there. Then also, I think what goes back to what's on your advocacy paperwork for this form is we need things to be walkable right now because we don't really have good transportation. And I think that's something that we can all focus on as a group of saying, how can we improve transportation? Because many of the people that work at our major, employers, they necessarily can't get there very quickly, or they can't get the job training at BOCES. So I think walkable neighborhoods are absolutely attractive to the new people, the 20s and 30s somethings, and it's kind of a cool term, but for us, we need to make our neighborhoods more walkable because it's not easy for people to get around otherwise.
Good. Christine, is that good?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
okay. Yes, Ms. Hicks?
Hi. My name is Ms. Hicks, Deborah Hicks, for those of you who don't know. I am president of the Alleviating Community Revitalization Committee, and I would like to talk about Seth, about his vision for that area as of right now. Because of poverty, violence is escalating in that area. We know that, I've seen that there's been a lot of demolished homes in the area just recently. Are you going to begin to remove those homes, add new homes to that area to increase the tax base there? We're losing our children, and we could gain those children back if we had a new community center that a lot of us have been trying to talk about. How do you address that?
So the question for Seth is, looking at the north end of the city of Niagara Falls in the Highland area, sort of what's his vision and plan for that area?
Well, no, not just my vision, working with your organization as well, of trying to increase the amount of home renovations that we do in that area, right? I think that's the grant that I mentioned earlier about finding homeowners that are willing to also go through home renovation. Then also, very importantly, figure out a way for people the private sector to put amenities in that neighborhood, like food service and a grocery store, because right now that area is a food desert, right? So those are things that are very important. Going to the community center kind of goes with the theme of earlier today. What can you figure out a way to pay for and sustain? How can you make that something that in a few years from now doesn't work anymore? I think it's a big conversation, and that's a complicated issue, as we've talked about in the past. One that needs more discussion, but I think with home renovation, we want to try to work with the organization, do as many home renovations as homeowners are willing to go through.
Back against the wall?
I had a question about how do you come up with a balance of what's good for the neighborhood and what's good for the city overall? And what I mean by that is, everybody has that mentality, not in my backyard. It was like they wanted to build all those buildings over on 39th Street, those apartments, and of course the neighborhood didn't want it. So now we're talking about the development, and of course there's no jobs there. And as an example, I want to point to Once Dairy. They wanted to do an improvement, they wanted to expand. The neighbors didn't want the extra trucks in the neighborhood. What happened? The dairy closed up and moved. Now there's no jobs there. The city loses tax base. We lost those jobs. How do you create that balance? Like, we do care what the neighborhood wants, but overall we gotta care what's gonna be good for the city.
I'll just go to start, because with Niagara Falls examples, it has to be, communication and conversation has to start as early as possible, right? Once there is a great example. You have to talk to the neighborhood very early on. I would say housing, the Walnut Homes project for Housing Visions is an example of, we took 6 months and met with the community, showed them examples of a Housing Visions development in Lockport, talked to them for a very long time before there was a decision to be made by the city. You have to have that conversation. It really comes down to planning. If you can't do anything quickly, you have to give the community an opportunity to weigh in. Sometimes that doesn't always work out because a developer or someone might want to do something quickly, but if you have the time to actually talk to your community and treat them like a real stakeholder, it's going to make a big difference. Sometimes the community, no matter what, you can do that and they're still going to be against something, but that's kind of the essence of government. So you have to do it right if you want to move certain things forward.
Michael?
Yeah, I would say another way to approach that, or another way maybe it comes into play sometimes, is on our end for the economic development type of people, making sure that what's being proposed or what's being talked about kind of aligns with what the city and the community's vision plan is. And I'll give you an example. We did have a company, a local company that we want to keep in North Tonawanda. They were looking to try to buy a property and put their facility there. But the property they wanted, it's in the middle of a residential area. Technically, they could put their facility there, but it's not zoned for it. It'd come with all kinds of problems. And we have industrial areas and areas where are more appropriate for them to locate. So as tough as it is for us to say, we need to say to them, look, we want to work with you, but we're going to make sure that our incentive programs or whatever it is are structured to push you to the appropriate area, not in this inappropriate location for them. And that's tough to do sometimes because there's a risk involved. They're here now. If that location doesn't work out for them, they could move somewhere and it could be not North Tonawanda. So, there's a risk involved, but ultimately
Right, we're talking about, you need to put the jobs in the community where people are, and then, residents chase the jobs out. So-
Right.
Chuck, anything to add on balance?
Just that, Mike used the word, you mentioned the zoning, and zoning, then your land use plan that comes out of that, and your community vision has to be involved with the developing of each of those steps. And when that happens, you can find the appropriate uses in the appropriate places. There's going to be outliers. We have a situation where we have one residence in a very industrial area. It's horrible for them, because anytime something that's net positive for the industrial growth of the city occurs, it makes their quality, it diminishes their quality of life. So we're looking right now at opportunities to find them a new location, because it's not, their residence is not consistent with the overall development of the city, and it's unfortunate, and you just have to handle those instances as best you can, and target your incentives as best you can to further the community goals.
Let's take one more question. Yep.
Yeah, I don't mean to bring this up, but I've been a doctor for 55 years, a family doctor. I have so many people I see that are living on the edge of poverty. They actually worked all their life, they're retired, they're getting their retirement, they're getting Social Security. I sent them up to, say, ETAC Neurological, and they're diagnosed with a rare disease, like multiple sclerosis. And they're put on a medication, and then they call a client and say, my insurance won't pay for it. It's cost me $300-400 a month to get the medicine that I need to stay alive. So what they're doing, they're having to give up either buying gas for the car or buying the food that they like so they can pay for their medicines. And they say, do we deserve this? We worked hard all our life to retire, and now we're living like this. And they actually are living on the verge of poverty. I don't know the answer to it, but it's something that I see as a family doctor all the time, and that really hits you hard when you think about that. These people don't deserve that. What can be done for them? I'm sorry to bring that up, but
No, that's, for a last question, that's absolutely a big one, right? I think what we can do, as a group of people, is try to at least provide people with certain job opportunity, training, opportunities where we can. There's no silver bullet answer to that question. Right, you're absolutely right. We can figure out ways to help incentivize for them to be in their home for as long as they can, but there's no single answer to that question. I'm not going to try to answer it. Right. So there's no one on a panel anywhere is going to come up with the right answer to that, but I think in combination, all of our organizations are trying to provide assistance.
Great topic for a future conference. Sure, or a workshop. Yeah. I promised Dale, he stepped out of the room, but he was curious, and it's going to segue into my last question for this panel. But how many of you have taken advantage of the opportunity to do some advocacy today? By a show of hands, about how many? Yeah, okay, so not everyone has felt comfortable doing it, but maybe close to half the folks in the room? Okay. So what I'll do with that is I'm actually going to ask each of the panel members, or whoever wants to respond to this, what can the people in the room here and the people that they're connected with through their networks, what can we do to help you do your jobs better, or help you in reaching the goals that's been set forth for your office? How can we advocate in support of you?
Make your voice heard is a big one. I mean, I think that we have all seen the value professionally of just public visioning, and it gives us clear targets, but it also helps us get the resources and create a roadmap to get to those targets. So the more people that get involved, the better. And you talked earlier too about entrepreneurism and fostering entrepreneurism, and I was glad that Seth took that pivot. And it's not just starting a business, it's making an investment in a home. It's your time, it's your effort, it's your passion, and just the fact that everybody is here, you're already doing that. But we need to harness this energy, and the more often we can get together and try to answer some of the hardest questions that leave us all kind of speechless, the better.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar point, I guess, but I would say if we haven't called you, then please call us, because we need to know what you're doing and what's available out there, and hopefully it'd be helpful for you to know what we're doing. There's plenty of people who come into our office, the City Community Development Office, and they come there because, you know what, I have a housing issue, is there housing rehab dollars available or something? But they have a lot of they might have other issues. There might be low-income people who have other issues that they need. So we try to connect them to the local groups, who could treat them holistically and kind of cover all the bases for them. But there's more out there than even we know to try to help and connect them to.
Picking one issue and then being vocal and working together on one. Poverty is a really big, it's not really an issue, it's a huge issue. But there's a lot of little ones in it: healthcare, housing, transportation. If all organizations focused on one outcome that they want to see, even if it's something like we want to see improved transportation in this neighborhood or in this city, and then move on to the next issue, it's a lot easier.
And I mean, and I would like to echo Christine from the audience's sort of summary of the guys sitting up here at this table, very approachable and willing to listen. So thank you all. Thank you guys for participating this afternoon.